Hi, everybody. Putting the link up. Putting the link up, don't mind me. Putting the link up, don't mind me. Putting the link up, don't mind me. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Come on, one more time. Great. There we go. Theodore Boone, kid lawyer. Page 116. We'll be ending this read aloud on time to facilitate the field trip and a biological break before the field trip. Thank you all, 4 of you who are with me right now. You're amazing. And let's get this going on. We learned Theodore Boone, Julio, and his cousin are the only people in town who know the truth about Mr. Duffy. They are the only ones who know the truth about Mr. Duffy. All right, it's 10:31, and I've got to end super on time. We've got only 5 of us now, but I am going to just go. They'll have to catch up on it later. What happens after you talk to him? Asked Julio. I don't know, said Theo. I haven't gotten that far. Julio disappeared into the night. Theo returned to his office where he kept a file on the Duffy case. There were newspaper articles, a copy of the indictment. There's a nice tasty word, indictment. It's actually spelled with a C. Let's see if I can get this word here. Indictment. It's got a C in it. Indictment just means the document written by the state accusing you of a crime. How does a courtroom work? Boom. The internet searches on Pete Duffy and the internet searches on Clifford Nance. And even the internet searches on Jack Hogan, the other lawyer, the prosecutor. All lawyers kept files. Wednesday night meant takeout from the Chinese restaurant called the Golden Dragon. It was always eaten in the den while the Boones watched Theo's favorite television show, Old Perry Mason, which was a lawyer show. Of course, Perry Mason was a very famous television show. Mrs. Boone was still with a client, a woman who could be heard crying through the locked door. Mr. Boone was on his way to the Golden Dragon when Theo explained that he needed to run by the shelter and spend a few minutes with Julio. Don't be late, said Mr. Boone. We eat at 7. I won't. Of course they eat at 7. That's what they do every night. So it's like what? Wednesday nights at the shelter, Thursday nights at the Golden Dragon. They have some routines going on here. The firm had a library on the ground floor. The firm is their lawyer firm. Near the front. There was a long table in the center of it with leather chairs all around. The walls were covered with shelves loaded with thick books. The important meetings were held in the library. Occasionally, groups of lawyers met there for a deposition negotiation. Vince, the paralegal, liked to work in there. Theo did too when the office wasn't busy. He also enjoyed sneaking into the library late in the afternoon after the firm had closed, after the others had left. He and his dog, Judge, entered the closed door. He didn't turn on the lights. He eased into a leather chair, propped his feet on the table, stared at the rows of books in the darkness. Thousands of them. He could barely hear the distant voices of his mother and his client down the hall. Theo knew no other kid whose parents worked together. He knew of no other kid who hung around in an office every day after school. Most of his friends were playing baseball or soccer or swimming or hanging around the house waiting for dinner. And there he was sitting in a dark law library, pondering the events of the last hour, talking to Julio about the witness. He loved this place, though. The smell of worn leather, dusty law books. It had an air of importance. How could it be that he, Theodore Boone, knew the truth about the Duffy murder? Of all people in Strattonburg, 75,000 people, why him? The town's biggest crime since something bad happened back in the 1950s. And he, Theodore Boone, is suddenly in the middle of it. He had no idea what to do. The end of the chapter. We'll keep going, of course. Chapter 10. Thank you all 15 of you who are watching with me now. There were a few rough-looking men hanging around the entrance of the Highland Street shelter when Theo parked his bike. He walked through them with a polite "excuse me" and a metallic smile. And he really had no fear because the men wouldn't bother a kid. There was a faint odor of stale booze in the air. "Got any change, kid?" Scratch's voice said. "No, sir," said Theo without slowing down. Inside, down in the basement, Theo found Julio and his family finishing dinner. His mother spoke passable English, but it was obvious she was surprised to see Theo on a Wednesday night. Okay, so Wednesday night is not when they went. On a Wednesday night. Theo explained in what he thought was perfect Spanish that Julio needed extra help with his algebra. Eventually, she did not understand perfect Spanish because she asked Julio what Theo was talking about. Then Hector began crying about something and she got busy with Hector. The cafeteria was packed and overheated, and there were crying children. Theo and Julio escaped to a small conference room upstairs, and one that his mother sometimes used to see shelter clients, actually, too. "Did you talk to your cousin?" he asked after they closed the door. "Yes, he said he would come, but I don't know. He's very nervous, Theo." I gotta adjust my hat, sorry. It's like driving me. Thank you. Sorry. "Yes, he's very nervous. Don't be surprised if he doesn't show up, Theo." "Okay, let's work on algebra." "Do we have to?" "Julio, you're getting a C in algebra. That's not good enough. You should be making at least a B." After 10 minutes, they were both bored. Theo couldn't concentrate because his mind was on Julio's cousin and the potential bomb his testimony would bring. Julio was drifting because he hated algebra. Theo's cell phone rang. "It's my mom." She was leaving the office and she was concerned about him. He assured her that he was fine. He worked diligently with Julio and he would be home in time for the Golden Dragon food, even though it might be cold by then. He flipped the phone shut. Julio said, "It's pretty cool you have a cell phone." "I'm the only kid at school with a cell phone." I'm not the only kid. I'm not the only kid at the school with a cell phone. And it's only for local calls, no long distance." "Still, it's cool." "Well, it's actually just a phone, not a smartphone, and it's not a computer. No one in my class has a cell phone." "You're a 7th grader. Wait till next year. Where do you suppose your cousin is, though, right now? Let's call him." Theo hesitated. He thought, why not? He didn't have all night to spend with a cousin. He punched the numbers and he handed the phone to Julio, who listened for a few seconds. Voicemail. But then there was a knock at the door. The cousin was still wearing a khaki work suit and a Waverly Creek Golf in bold letters across the back of his shirt and in much smaller letters over the front pocket. His matching cap had the same wording. He wasn't much bigger in size than Theo, and he looked younger than 18 or 19, actually. His eyes danced around wildly. Before he sat down, he gave the clear impression that he was ready to leave. He refused to shake hands with Theo, and he refused to give his first or last name. In rapid Spanish, he went back and forth with Julio, and the words were tense. "He wants to know why he should trust you," Julio said. Theo was thankful for the interpretation. He said, "Look, Julio, how about a quick review? He came to you. You came to me. Now I'm here. I didn't start this process. If he wants to leave, fine. I'll be happy to go home. It was tough talk, and it sounded pretty strong in English." Julio passed it along in Spanish, and the cousin glared at Theo as if he had been insulted. Theo didn't want to leave. He knew he should, actually. He knew better than to get involved in this. He had been telling himself to butt out. The truth was that Theo relished actually exactly being here as he was in the moment. Tell him he can trust me, and that I will not tell anyone what he says. Julio passed it along, and his cousin relaxed a little. It was obvious to Theo that the cousin was deeply troubled, and he needed help. Julio kept rattling on in Spanish. He was heaping praise about Theo. Theo understood some of it. The cousin smiled. Theo had printed a colored Google Earth search map of the creek course, and he marked the Duffy home. The cousin, still unnamed, began to tell his story. He pointed in the spot in the trees in a dogleg, golf terminology, I'll have to look it up, I don't even know, on the 6th fairway. And he spoke rapidly about what he had seen. He had been sitting on some timbers near a stream bed, just inside the tree line, eating his lunch, minding his own business when he saw the man enter the house from the rear door and exit a few minutes later. Julio gamely hung on his interpretation, often stopping his cousin so he could really do the English well. Theo, to his credit, began to understand more and more of the Spanish as he grew accustomed to the speech patterns of his cousin. The cousin described the frenzy around the golf course after the police showed up and the gossip spread. According to one of his friends, a kid from Honduras who waited tables in the clubhouse grill, Mr. Duffy was having a late lunch and a drink when he got the news that his wife had been found. He made a scene. He hustled out, he jumped in his golf cart, and he raced home. This friend said that Mr. Duffy was wearing a black sweater, tan slacks, and a maroon golf cap. It was a perfect match, said the cousin. The same outfit worn by the man he saw enter the Duffy home and exit a few minutes later. From his file, Theodore produced 4 photographs of Pete Duffy. All 4 had been found online in the archives of the Strattenburg Daily newspaper. He enlarged them to 8 by 10, and he spread them on the table and he waited. The cousin could not identify Mr. Duffy. He estimated that he was between 60 to 100 yards away when he was having his quiet lunch and saw the man. The man he had seen looked very similar to the one in the photographs, but he couldn't be certain. He was certain, though, of what the man was wearing. A positive identification of the husband by the cousin would be helpful, but not crucial. It would be easy to establish how Mr. Duffy was dressed, and the fact that a witness saw the man in identical clothing enter the home just minutes before the murder would nail a conviction. It would. At least in Theo's opinion. As Theo listened to Julio translate into Spanish, he watched the cousin closely. There was no doubt he was telling the truth. Why would he not tell the truth? He had nothing to gain by lying. And he had plenty to lose, actually. His story was believable, and it fit perfectly with the prosecution's theory of guilt. The problem was that the prosecution had no idea that this witness existed. Theo listened, and he asked himself again what he should do next. The cousin was talking faster. The dam had finally broken, and he just wanted to unload everything. Julio was working hard to translate. Theo typed feverishly on his laptop, taking as many notes as possible. He stopped their narrative, and he asked Julio to repeat something, and off again they went. When Theo could think of no more questions, he glanced at his watch. It was after 7, and his parents would not be happy he was late for dinner. He said he needed to leave. The cousin asked what would happen next. I'm not sure. Give me time. Let me sleep on it. But you promised not to tell. I won't tell, Julio. Not until the 3 of us decide on a plan. If he gets scared, he'll disappear, said Julio. He cannot get caught. Do you understand? Of course I understand. The chicken chow mein at home was colder than usual, and Theo had very little appetite for it. The Boones ate on TV trays in the den. Judge, his dog, refused dog food since the first week as member of the family. He ate from a bowl near the television. Why aren't you eating? Said his mom. I am eating, Mom. You seem very preoccupied. Yes, you do, Theo. Did something happen at the shelter? No, just thinking about Julio and his family and how difficult it is for them. Oh, you're such a sweet kid, Teddy. If you only knew, he thought. On the television, Perry Mason, in a show in black and white, was in the middle of a big trial, and he was actually on the verge of losing the case. The judge was fed up with him. The jurors looked skeptical. The prosecutor was full of confidence. Suddenly, Perry looked in the crowd of spectators and called the name of a surprise witness. The witness took the stand and began telling a story far different from the one the prosecutor had put forth. This is on a TV show, so don't be confused. The news story made perfect sense. The surprise witness withstood cross-examination, and the jury found Perry Mason's client and favored him not guilty. Another happy ending, another courtroom victory on television. "It doesn't work that way," said Mrs. Boone. No such thing as a surprise witness. Theo saw an opening. Well, what if a witness suddenly appears? One that was crucial to the truth, and one that no one knew about. If no one knew about him, how would he find his way to the courtroom? What if he just appeared? What if an eyewitness read about the trial in the newspaper, saw something about it on television, and just came forward? No one knew he existed. No one knew he witnessed the crime. What would the judge do? It was rare that Theo could stump briefly the other two lawyers in his family. His mother went first. The prosecution cannot use a witness it has not disclosed to the court and the defense. The rules prohibit such surprise witnesses. But, his father argued, if the prosecution doesn't know about a witness, then the prosecution cannot disclose his identity. A trial is all about finding the truth. Denying an eyewitness the chance to testify is the same thing as hiding the truth. The rules are the rules, said his mom, but the rules can be modified by the judge when necessary. A conviction would not stand up then on appeal on a surprise witness. I'm not so sure about that, said his dad. Back and forth, the lawyers argued. Theo grew quiet. He thought of reminding his parents that neither specialized in criminal law, and the comment would probably actually draw some fire from both of them. Such discussions were actually common in the Boone household, and Theo had learned much about law over dinner, on the front porch, and even riding down the road in the car in the back seat. For example, one thing he had learned, as his parents had lawyers, lawyers were considered to be officers of the court, and such they had a duty to aid in the administration of justice. So if other lawyers violated ethics, or if the police broke rules or judge got a line, then his parents were supposed to take the appropriate action. Many lawyers actually ignored this responsibility, according to his parents. Theo was afraid to tell him about Julio's cousin. Their sense of duty would probably force them to go straight to Judge Gantry. The cousin would be picked up by the police, dragged into court, forced to testify, and then detained as an illegal immigrant. They would put him in jail or a detention center, where, according to Mr. Mount, he might spend months waiting to get shipped back to El Salvador. Theo's credibility would be ruined, and a family would be seriously harmed. But a guilty man would be convicted. Otherwise, Pete Duffy would probably walk out of the court a free man. He would get away with murder, literally. Theo choked down another bite of cold chicken. He knew he was going to sleep very little tonight. So that's the end of the chapter, and it's close to 10:50. So we have to pause here. We're exactly almost halfway through the book. This is quite a conundrum. Theo knows that if he alerts people to this witness, Pete Duffy will get convicted. But then his family in El Salvador won't get their money. He would get deported. You know what I mean? He would harm Julio's cousin's family significantly. What does he do here? The truth will unfold in the next few days of Theodore Boone, Kid Lawyer. All right. Remember to log on in 10 minutes at 10:59. Not on my Zoom, on the field trip Zoom. I'm not going to be able to go on my Zoom to tell you, because you can only do one Zoom. I'll see you guys at Mission Capistrano in about 11 minutes.